In this video, we are going to literally break down everything there is to learn about Hacienda Hardpoint and SnD. For Hardpoint, we're going to go over the spawns, the timings, ideal setups, ideal breaks, and ideal rotations. And then for the SnD, we're going to go over timings. We're going to go over ideal scenarios you're going to be put into. And we're going to talk about how to clutch up certain situations. I don't know exactly how long this video is going to be, but please feel free to use the chapters down below to pick exactly what you want to watch. And if you really do want to just help me out, please feel free to watch the whole video. That'd be amazing. Before hopping in, I do want to showcase my Discord. In my Discord for $30 a month, $20 or $10 a month, you can have access to infographics showcasing all of the information I'm going over here today, literally the spawns, timing, setups, routes, and more. And if you do decide to purchase, please purchase through desktop. If you purchase through phone or tablet, it will charge you an extra $10, and I have no clue where it goes, so look out for that. Starting off with P1, let's learn the spawns. I'll tell you right now, you want to be spawning on P2 side majority of the time. Now, the reason why is because when you need to rotate, if you're spawning at new, your life is easy, right? You just go to new. But specifically, let's take a look at this first spawn. This first spawn right here is going to happen because the enemies have zero map control. So if they're all dead and they're all off spawn, usually the game is always going to spawn you a little bit close. Now, let's say the enemies do have map control and they're pushed up a little bit, towards the middle of the point. This will then spawn you a little bit further back. And this is just spawning you a little bit further back, not really indicating much other than the enemies are pushed up a little bit. However, let's say that the enemies are pushing up one side of the hallway. So let's say they're only pushing up this side of the hallway. This will actually spawn you down over here at Vineyards. So this is the third spawn. This is the second spawn you can get. And then, believe it or not, this is the exact same thing on the opposite end. If this player was not here and instead he was over here and he's pushing through, this would then cause you to start spawning at Lambo, just like this. Now, there is one more spawn, and basically it's if these enemies are, not only pushed up into our base, but let's say one of them was also off spawn and they're running away, you could get an emergency spawn, and this emergency spawn would be right here. So these are all the blue spawns. Now the red spawns work pretty much the exact same way, where you can spawn bottom wine over here, and again, you're going to spawn bottom wine because all of the enemies are dead, they're all off spawn, so they don't have any map pressure. If the enemies do have a little bit of map pressure and they're all on the hard point or looking out of this window, this will spawn you a little bit further back. But if the enemies are pushing through rock side or if they're pushing through this hallway, this will always spawn us down over here at 10. And it's the exact same thing on the opposite end. If the enemies are pushing past secret or pushing past the left side hallway, this will force spawn us all the way over here at boat. Now, just like this emergency spawn, there's also an emergency spawn for red team. So basically, the only time you're really going to get this is, let's say the enemies are off spawn and they're running, off of P4. And let's say the enemies are also hard blocking and they're rotated at new. Pretty much all the spawns would be blocked. Therefore, you're going to spawn emergency. But really, the biggest thing you just need to pay attention to is, again, understanding. If the enemies are pushing the left side of the hallway, we're going to be spawning at circle 4. If the enemies are pushing the right side of the hallway, we're going to be spawning down at circle 3, spawning down at circle 3. All right, we just went over spawns. Now we would go over timings, but there is one last win condition I want to talk about for P1. Specifically, for P1, you want to make sure you have one player playing on this side of the hallway at all times. The reason why is because if this player plays on this hallway at all times, this is actually blocking all of the blue spawns, and this will constantly force the enemies to spawn red. Now, this is very important to realize because if this enemy was not here, or if this teammate was not here, and instead he pushed down the hallway, if we have one teammate pushing down the hallway, one teammate on time, one teammate at rocks, and then one teammate on the opposite end of the hallway, this will flip spawns. This will start spawning the enemies in the blue spawns. So again, really the win condition is just making sure you have one player in this rectangle at all times to play for those spawns. Now, the graphic you see under my webcam right now are all of the timings for the literal time it takes you to spawn in and hit a specific position on the map. But we're going to go ahead and go over in-game right here on what these routes look like. So I would recommend if you ever spawn bottom wine right here, there's a high chance that either all the enemies are dead, so then you can just start pushing through and try to get map control right here. But I can probably bet that if you ever spawn bottom wine, it's probably because the enemies are actually rotating, which, if you guys don't know, rotating is always at 20 seconds. When you see that there's 20 seconds left of old hardpoint, start playing for new. So if we spawned down here and there was 20 seconds left of P1, that means these enemies all rotated, and I would highly recommend to start taking this route over here on the right and do this with your teammates. Now, as you're taking this route on the right, you need to make sure no one's on this head glitch. You may have to throw a shoulder real quick to see if anyone is playing on that back head glitch, and you most importantly need to check your corners right here. Because if the enemies are rotated, they're going to be sitting in one of these corners expecting you to push this lane. So you need to clear all of these corners. But once you do that, this is where now you start following through and you start playing for the back spawns of new. Let's say that you spawn bottom wine and you actually have a teammate pushing up on the left side hallway. This would actually force spawn the enemies down over here at well side. Therefore, if we're playing for new, I would highly recommend to just hit this wall bounce, get towards rock, and then start hitting the rotation this way for P2, or you can run with your teammate here to play for these kills, because based on the timer, if we win these gunfights, because we're in this hallway, this will now start spawning the enemies far away. Let's say you spawn in the back spawn over here. I always recommend to just get control of your hallways. Now, when you get control of hallways, I always recommend hugging one side, throw the shoulder. If you do have a grenade, you can throw it to clear this deep left corner. But usually there's always an enemy camping somewhere. They're either camping right here in this corner or they're camping in the opposite corner. So you really want to make sure you're looking for that first. But once you have control of it, you can now push up and start looking for the gunfights down the hallways. Let's say you spawn bottom 10 though. There's a few things you can do by going bottom 10. The first thing is you can just start fighting for top hallways, which again, I usually recommend just doing this. And as you're pushing over here through office, recognize because you spawned at 10, there should be an enemy somewhere over here on your close left. And I can guarantee you that they will be close left, or they might be standing in this head glitch right here. Which this takes me to the second route that you can take. Instead of going through office and going wide, you could come right here. You just got to worry about players, potentially being down in the hallway. But once you push across, you can now shoot the enemy sitting right here in this angle. So again, if you're spawning 10, usually that means there's an enemy standing right here, or there's an enemy standing right here. Now, those are the two routes I would recommend AR players to take. If you have an SMG, I would then just recommend, push over here. Always expect an enemy to be top looking for you. But at this point, you could try to challenge time, depending on what's happening on the map. Like if your teammates have kills, if they have kills, I would then recommend hitting the hard point. But if we don't have kills, then I would recommend, probably doing like a wall bounce here just to get info and like see if you can find the enemy up here at all looking for you. That also is really good right there. As you can see, I can actually wall bounce and shoot this entire time, all while mantling. So that'd be really good for taking this side. Now, the last thing you can do is if you spawn here and you're the first spawner and all of your teammates are like, off spawn or like they're dead, I would then recommend going all the way through for a pinch, because as you go for this pinch, ideally your teammates are top halls fighting. You then have a timing to pinch the enemies. And because you're standing in this position, this would then cause the enemies to start spawning out. Now, if you spawn at both side over here, again, I would recommend just getting top office control, which this time you can now hit a wall bounce. And of course, you can definitely throw grenades to clear the close right plat. But again, if you're spawning at both, there's a chance that the enemies are playing over here on your right. If you don't want to hit the wall bounce into the window, then you could just go around on the staircase right here, use it as a head glitch, clear your corners. But again, usually when you're spawning at boat, you can expect an enemy to be somewhere over here on your right. Now, that doesn't mean that after you spawn in, there isn't going to be an enemy over here, because there absolutely could be. There could be an enemy that literally pulls up their scoreboard, waits for you to spawn in. And once you spawn in, then they push up and play for these kills. So just be aware of that. But Again, usually when you're spawning at boat, it just means that the enemies are pushing up on the right side hallways. If you don't want to fight for the top hallways, the next thing you could do is push over here towards rock side. Just always expect an enemy to either be on the head glitch or the inner head glitch. You can also check the corner as well. But once you get right here, this is where you need to make the decision. If there's 20 seconds left of P1, I would recommend just pushing through and rotating to play for new. However, if there's more than 30 seconds, at this point, I would say, again, fight for these top hallways, because if you fight for these top hallways, we get the kills. By the time you push to the top hallway, you are now flipping the spawns. Taking a look at blue spawns, I would recommend most people to just literally get to top halls control. Again, if you're spawning close, enemies don't have map control, so you can just quickly get up here, hold an AR, hold an iron, and then one player can hop on time. But let's say we're actually spawning further back over here. If we're spawning further back, at this point, we need to expect enemies to already be in like our close corners, right? So as we're pushing up, you may want to right here, throw a grenade towards the right to clear out the right. And if you do, throw a frag grenade, right? Throw a frag grenade, bounce it off of this wall and land it in this corner to really clear out all of that corner. And if you don't hit anyone with the grenade, then you can expect the enemies to be left. And ideally, you have a teammate with you doing this. I would recommend usually having 2 teammates controlling these top halls. You could then send one player to go bottom. And when this one player goes bottom, you want to make sure that no enemies can, play in any of these corners. But at this point, by the time you push up right here, you can check to see if anyone's behind you. And then at this point, you would just play for the final kills. Maybe you can hop out the window and then go for a pinch on time. But you're going to run into a gunfight. Gunfights are going to happen. Now, if you spawn at vineyards over here, again, I personally think most of the AR players, or, at least 2 people, should play for this top hall control. You can play it the exact same way. Throw the grenade off of the wall right there, land it in the corner, and then double chow the left and clear it. But for the SMG players, you absolutely can push through and go for a flank. Now, I would recommend right here, again, you could go bottom to try to kill the guy off time, but usually there's a player playing top, which is just usually sketchy. You could just do the wall bounce right here and, wall bounce up all while shooting. And then the last thing you could probably do is if your teammates did win the gunfights and they're anchoring, or if they're waiting for a flank out of you, you could push all the way through and then go for a flank right here. That's one flank I personally really like doing. It's spawning at well, going all the way through and full flanking the enemies. Now, if you're spawning at Lambo side, same thing. I always recommend just sending 2 players to get control of these hallways again. Again, at this point, the enemies should be pushed up on our left. You can throw a grenade to bounce it off, clear out the close left corner. And again, you can expect enemies to probably be close right, just based on the timings. And of course, they want to flip spawns, so we should expect them to be pushing. But for all of the other players that want to push through the right side, honestly, pushing through rocks over here, you can expect an enemy to be on the head glitch or this close left. But at this point, once you get right here, this is where now you need to be aware of your minimap. Are the enemies on the right or are the enemies on the left? If your teammates were not able to push out of the hallways, I would recommend to look left for a little bit, see if you could find a kill, and then focus right. But if your teammates did win the gunfights, then at this point, you can literally just push the right and just play on the right. But if your teammates are losing gunfights, you can, throw a few shoulders, but I always recommend going back right here. So an example is let's say you have 2 teammates and there's 2 enemies. Let's say your 2 teammates died and there's 1 enemy left over here on the left. Always go for this player first, because if you kill him, we now have the spawns for P2, and that's more important than you just running up and, trying to kill the guy out of time. Now let's go over some ideal setups and breaks for P1. Starting off with, I highly recommend having 1 player play in this window with an AR. You can see if the enemies are climbing up, and you can double chow this doorway right here. But usually your most important job is just making sure that it can't climb up. The second player will be playing all the way over here on this position here. Playing in this position will force spawn the enemies to spawn at 10 the entire time. And then it allows you to shoot this doorway over here. And you can also shoot down at secret if needed. We could then have a 3rd teammate actually pushed up right over here into this corner. And the idea is they're just literally holding this office control. You can play it a little bit aggressive, looking for the info, but I would just recommend, laying down under this bench or just simply throwing shoulders and just playing for the timing or those kills. Now, our last teammate will be playing on the OBJ, and when he's playing on the OBJ, you mostly want to be looking at bottom secret, but you can look at bottom wine if you expect any enemies to hit over here. The final thing I will say is after killing 3 enemies, if you know you are missing 1 enemy, you can back up and expect this enemy to be pinching. Again, let me say that. If you killed all 3 enemies and we are missing 1, and we know they're spawning at 10, that is a high possibility that the enemy is pinching, so you can turn around, pre-aim this doorway, and you will find that enemy pinching. You'll probably get reported for cheating. Now, I'm only going to share the best setup that I've seen so far, but there are several other setups, such as you can have the exact same thing on the opposite end, where one player is pushed up, sitting in this corner right here, holding all of the entire left, and this would force spawn the enemies to spawn at boat. Therefore, we would still have one player right here pre-aiming bottom wine. We would want to have one player right here pre-aiming the top push, and he can also wallbang for support. And then we can have one player over here holding rock, expecting the enemies to push through rock in both sides. Again, because we were pushed up on the left of the hallways, we can expect the enemies to spawn boat. Therefore, they will push through rock right here. Now, for breaking P1 on bad side, I would recommend a 2-2 split or a 3-1. Highly, I would prefer a 2-2. The first one, we would have an AR player going wide like this, and as you're going wide, you're going to take your time and look for this kill close left. We would then have one AR player chow up the staircase and pre-aim that head glitch right there and look for the kill. We would then have our 2 SMG players pushing through, and as they push through, that AR player will shoot the player on the right head glitch. Both SMG players would push up here, and they would play for these kills together. Ideally, 2 SMG players playing in this position will start causing the spawn flips. This AR player, after getting those kills, would want to double chow with the other AR on the left, but this guy should push through. And the idea is this AR is pushing through to stand right here, while our 2 SMG players are pushing through to find these final kills from behind. And this is where we can get into our ideal setup, where we have one SMG player laying down right here. We could then have one SMG player playing right here, or expect these enemies to be pushing through rock. We could then have the AR player just playing right over here on the left window. And then our final AR player, let's assume that if he died, he would then just spawn in and go towards the hard point. Or if he did win the gunfights, he could probably just stay in that corner. One SMG would be playing on the wall, and then maybe one SMG would just be checking rock. But at that point, we would know we're spawning the enemies down at 10, and we would play for those kills. Rotating from P1 to P2, if you're ever spawning close or on actual P2 itself, that means you have time to push out and get some map control. So if we're literally spawning on Lambo, you can literally send a player to go back all the way over here, sit on one of these cars, and just watch the left lane push through. We could then have one player push out of short right here and throw shoulders to look info for middle right here. He can also just throw info like this. We would then have one player push out the front. And when this player pushes out the front, he can hold this middle doorway and expect the enemies. And he can have all the front pushed out. So the idea is we have everything pushed out while our last teammate is on time. And we basically just play for info. We make those gunfights last as long as possible. And ideally, if we win the gunfights, we are spawning all the enemies out. However, if you're spawning over here at Vineyards during the P1 to P2 rotation, you can already expect enemies to be on Lambo. So at this point, I would recommend to just go wide and start expecting the enemies to be pushing out of Lambo or be on Lambo itself. You could definitely have, 1 or 2 AR players go wide like this, and then the SMG players can cut through middle. But if you're cutting through middle, you need to know for a fact that these players will be pushing down lobby and pushing down through secret. So you're going to have to pay attention to that for quite a bit. But eventually, once you get to the point, you can expect the enemy to be sliding through this front door. Maybe they're already laying down on Lambo, or they're sitting in a really good corner. And then on bad side, if you're rotating, the concept still applies. If we are rotating through rock side, you should get here first before the enemies. But by the time you get to right here, should be the exact same time the enemy is pushing through the side doorway. So I would recommend if you're rotating through rock side, first place you need to be looking is short door right here. This is where you need to get the kills. Other than that, if you don't see the enemy at all, go ahead and just grab a nice corner. And if we have 2 people in time, that's even better, because now we can have one player hugging this corner to hold the short, and then we can have one player hugging this corner to hold the long push. And this sets up a really nice crossfire. Now, if we're spawning at 10 and we need to rotate, this is where I would recommend literally all 3 teammates, if not all 4, should push through well side over here. And literally, it's the same concept as spawning right here. However, this time, we're probably going to dedicate 3 people to play for the back. Just because we can expect the enemies to already be on this black Jeep, we can expect them to be on this yellow car right over here, and we can expect them to be on the statue head glitch right over here as well. So this is where, again, I would recommend sending 3 people towards the back, playing for these kills. Our 1 player would be, pushing through top middle and pinching, or he would be cutting through right here. Again, just expect the enemies to be here. But once we win these gunfights, we can get into the time. Now this is where we can look at the spawns for P2. And the spawns are pretty simple for this one. If we have the back spawns, we're going to be spawning close. If the enemies are on the hard point and they're pre-aiming this spawn, we're then going to just spawn a little bit more to the left. However, if the enemies start pushing out of P2, so the second that they leave P2 and they get to this car right here, this could then start spawning us down over here at Vineyards. And then for the enemies, if they control the hard point, they're going to be spawning close right here. And let's say we're barely getting into the hard point, they can still spawn close. But by the time we get into the hard point and we push out front or we start pre-aiming front, this is going to force spawn all the enemies to start spawning down over here at bottom wine. Now, if we have a player pushed out rock and we have a player pushed out middle, this would then force spawn the enemies to spawn all the way over here at boat. And these are all of the spawn points for P2. Now, if you're spawning close and you have teammates on the hard point, I would recommend just running as fast as possible. You can throw a grenade over the garage to land at Rockside and then just start playing for these trades. However, if the enemies control the hard point and we know they're on the hard point, I would recommend pulling out an AR and sliding because you can instantly expect the enemy to be on Lambo. And this is the first gunfight we're going to have to get into. Now, if you already have an AR player shooting right here and looking over you, the SMG player should go wide like this to clear everything on the right. And then this SMG player can start crossing. And this is supposed to make the enemies think that we're going to start hitting middle right here. However, what we could do now is this SMG player could throw a shoulder here, push up even a little bit more, and start holding this corner right here. Now, this SMG would want to hold right here. The AR player would want to hold right there. And then our last 2 players that spawn in. Let's say our last 2 players spawn in over here on the left because, again, if the enemy is on the Lambo and they're pre-aiming on the right, you're gonna spawn left. Our next 2 teammates that spawn here, one of them can, check the left over here and start going wide and check the top steps, check the side door, check these corners. And then our other player can push through the middle right here. And as he pushes through middle, he's going to look top and bottom lobby. And at this point, both players execute together. And they try to get inside of this doorway. Now, ideally, every time you find us being in advantage, whether that's 4v3 or 4v2, everyone should hit the hard point and play for those final trades. Now, if you do spawn at Vineyards, you can already expect the enemies to be pushing down and they're already going to be on this car. So you can probably just pull out an AR and start looking for this gunfight. And you could go wide or you could try to cut it close. I would just recommend just play cover to cover the entire time. And then everyone else, we're kind of going to be forced to just like hit through lobby right here. If there is more than 30 seconds, I would recommend setting 2 people on the right, 2 through lobby. But if there's less than 30 seconds left, like 25 seconds left, honestly, I would just send 1 player towards the back and then everyone else fight through middle. Just because ideally we want to give these enemies the spawns so then we can start spawning at new and have an easier rotation for P3. Now, if you're spawning on red side, this is where I would recommend the AR player to literally just, hold this head glitch, get damage down. And we have 2 SMG players rotate on the right over here, throw shoulders, swing wide, clear out this corner on the right, and then you can stand up and see if anyone else is playing on the close right corner. This is where you can push across and just start clearing everything else out on the right as your AR player is holding the left and holding the Lambo head glitch right here. Now, you may want to have a 4th AR player pre-aim here as well, but this 4th AR player will want to be peeking down and making sure no one is playing in the water. And ideally, what's going to happen is we should have 1 SMG player playing close right here. We should have that 1 AR player. We should have another AR player holding the left. And then our other SMG player is just basically closing in on the distance right here to clear off these close left corners. And at this point, same thing. If we go up 4v3, 4v2, we just fly in and we play these final trades. SMG players, you guys mostly need to control this short. This is by far, I would consider like the most important win condition for P2. And then the AR players, once you win those gunfights, get onto this head glitch, and now you can just start spawn trapping the enemies in their spawn. If you're spawning bottom wine though, I would recommend throwing your nades up here in these windows right here, because that means there could be an enemy pushing out of rock and looking to kill you guys. There could also be an enemy pushing out of top middle looking to kill you guys. So I would just always recommend throwing these 2 grenades here. But other than that, I would recommend, if there is about, let's say, less than 30 seconds of the hardpoint time, I would recommend sending 1 player to just go towards rock and just start holding these enemies on the point. And then everyone else, we could send 2 players top and 1 player bottom. So 2 players would go top right here. And these 2 players, again, check all of your corners, throw your grenades, clear everything out. And then the 1 player bottom will have to worry about the gunfight right in front of them right here. Of course, check your corners. But usually at this point, we could then, find kills. We would triple hit through closet. We would give the enemies the old spawns. We would be spawning at new, and we would be in the perfect scenario for soaking old and rotating for new. Now, if there's more than 45 seconds left of the time and we want the back spawns, I would recommend sending 1 player over here on this well route, just because most enemies will never expect this route. And again, once you find these kills, you pretty much guarantee the back spawns for your team. Other than that, if you're spawning back boat, all that really means is the enemies have control of rock and they have control of top middle. So as you're pushing up, you have to, take the time of clearing all of this out and definitely expect these enemies. But if we do, again, find ourselves finding like a 2-piece and we're up in a 4v2, at that point, maybe we can just bang the front, get that scrap time, and then get ready for rotation for P3. We already talked a lot about breaking, so let's go ahead and talk about a really good setup. Starting with the anchor. Usually the last player off spawn, when your teammates have control of the map and the hill, should always watch the pinch. Now you could play a little bit, up close like this and like just check middle and check front, or sorry, check left and check middle back and forth like this. Or you can just play on the back side over here and just be able to hold the entire left cross. And then whenever needed, you can then just chow out and just shoot the players crossing to the right. This would then leave us having a second player playing on the staircase right here to hold the push out. And after this player finds kills middle, this player would want to push out middle right here. Look for the enemy spawning bottom wine. If you don't see them spawning bottom wine, you know they're going to be rock, and then you can just pinch them and start killing them all at rock. We, of course, would want 1 AR player just playing on the Lambo, just holding front pretty much the entire time. And then we can have a second SMG player just playing in short that can help lobby. They can help the full flank. They can help front. But again, if we do find ourselves finding 4 kills and all the enemies are dead, this player can push out of rock. And now we would have 1 player pushed out of rock, and we would also have 1 player pushed out of middle. And this again would force spawn all the enemies back boat. Now we move on to P3, which is one of the more complicated hills when it comes to playing Hacienda. However, same thing. Let's go over the spawns. Ideally, you want to be spawning in the back because this is the closest spawn you can get. Again, you get the close spawn, and that means all the enemies are dead and they don't have any map control. But if the enemies do have a little bit of map control, or they're on the front side of the hardpoint, you're going to start spawning a little bit further back right here. Now, if the enemies have full map control of the hill, top plat, and maybe they're even push out of tin, this will then force spawn you over here at boat. For the enemies, same thing. They're gonna spawn close if all of blue team don't have any map control and they're all dead. However, if blue team is on the hard point and they're pushing up a little bit, then red team will spawn just a little bit further back. And then if we can actually get 1 player on blue team to push all the way up and sit in this like corridor right here, this would then force spawn the enemies to spawn at lobby over here. Honestly, if there is a win condition for this hill, I would say it's controlling plat. Controlling plat just allows you to have a high ground advantage. And not only that, but usually getting control of plat first makes breaking easier. So again, if you're spawning close, usually I would recommend just pushing up and getting map control. You can have 1 player sitting right here with an AR just holding the right cross. And then you could also have another player standing right here throwing shoulders and looking for the left side cross, because these enemies will be spawning at well. We could then have 1 AR player play on the staircase as well and look over. But let's say we already have front covered, then this player could then push up and start pre-aiming the hop up right here at top secret. Now, if this is an AR player, I would recommend them just to like keep their distance and just check middle, because these enemies could go bottom secret right here. So you want to be able to pick secret and top secret. But let's say we had a SMG player. If we have an SMG player, this SMG player can actually push up and play in this top window and literally just cut all the enemies off from this one position right here. Now, this is very important to recognize though, and that is, what the heck are we going to do about spawns? So again, if we already have 3 people pushed up and you're the last guy off spawn, the best thing you can do as the last guy off spawn is literally just back up right here and then just start holding the full pinch. Now, the enemies, if they go through bottom secret and they don't do the hop up to top middle, then they're gonna go bottom wine right here. So this is exactly where you can expect them to be. And by playing in this position, you hard block all of these spawns around you, so the enemies are constantly gonna be spawning at well. Now, of course, if one of your teammates die, that's where you're gonna wanna bump, so you would just push up, and if your teammate died middle, you can fill in middle. But if your teammates died on time, you would go and fill on time, which again, at this point, playing on top plat is just so freaking good. You're going to be in a really good position. Now, if you're spawning a little bit further back, and that means the enemies are actually on the hard point, I would then recommend a 2-2 split where you can send 2 people to go get control of top plat. Again, you're going to want to check your corners and everything. And at this point, I would actually recommend one player to go wide and then go for a pinch front like this. And then the other player would cut through plat. Now, again, just always remember to clear your corners, because as you're coming plat right here, you got to clear this close left, close right, and then clear the close left. At that point, you can now start fighting the player's time. And then our last 2 teammates off of spawn, I would highly, highly recommend them to come over here on the right. One player can already start holding a pre-aim at 10 and expect an enemy to push up, but typically an AR player would just chill here, look for info, get damage down, and then the SMG player could then just start closing the distance. If you really want to, you can wall bounce over the doorway to close the distance even more and try to find a kill on time, but typically you will be the player, looking for this trade inside of 10. If you're the SMG player and you don't want to jump over 10, or if you don't want to fight 10, then you could jump over 10 and then just get inside of 10 this way, and it'll catch the enemies by surprise. At this point, you would be forced to fight through the doorway, or if you can try to go for another route around again. And then if you ever find yourself spawning at boat, this is where you would need to recognize, is it time to rotate, and do you just go to new, or do we fight old? If we decide to fight old, I would recommend one player going towards elbow side, typically an AR player, just to look over here, fight players 10, be able to push inside of 10 when needed. But all 3 other players, you can expect these enemies to be pushed up plat, be pushed up elbow. And I would recommend literally just throwing grenades through this window and having 3 players just quickly clear this all out. And same thing, you can have one player go for the full pinch, and then you can have 2 players clearing out plat. And ideally at this point, we're looking for those kills. But just remember, if there's 20 seconds left, usually that means it's time to rotate. In a perfect world for a setup, I would recommend having one AR player play on the staircase so you can just chow across. You could then have one SMG player just throwing shoulders to get info over here on the left, and this gives the callouts if the enemies are going top secret or bottom secret. Definitely make sure you play your life when needed though. And then we would have one player playing top middle, and this one player playing top middle, again, I would recommend going back and forth between picking up middle and top secret like this. Depending on the kills, you could probably push up here and find a few freebies through top well, but then I would recommend just backing up again and just playing this area. And then our 4th and final teammate will be wanting to play on these back steps here. And let's say this was off of rotation. I can highly, highly, highly guarantee that if you rotated from P2 to P3 and the enemies controlled old P2, you can expect them to hit through rock or hit through top left holes. So this is where you would want to anchor and basically look for that. If P2 hasn't ended yet, you can actually play up top here and you can play, back and forth like this, looking for the info. But the second that P3 pops and we have kills, you need to play down here to block those spawns. In fact, I would say just as a safety measure, let's say P3 popped, we killed an enemy, and then that enemy just spawned in now, just do a double check and see if he actually spawned in the back. And if you don't see him in the back, then you're good. That means he spawned at well. Last but not least, we have P4, which is considered one of the easiest hills to hold in this game. The way the spawns work is you're either going to spawn close at Lambo. If you're not spawning close at Lambo, that means the enemies are on the point and they're pre-aiming Lambo. If they're pre-aiming Lambo, this is going to force spawn you over here in lobby. And then if the enemies are hard blocking and they have a player pushed out front and they have a player pushed out middle right here, this would actually spawn you over here at Vineyards. But Vineyards is usually acting as like an emergency spawn, where if all the spawns are blocked, you're going to spawn here. So it's really hard to try and force it, but that spawn does exist. Then for red team, it's pretty simple. You're either going to spawn close, and that's because we control the hard point and the enemies have 0 map control, or if the enemies do control the hard point, we're just going to be spawning at boat side over here. And then if the enemies push out the front side of P4 and they're blocking their spawns, they can actually spawn us even further away back over here next to P3. So if you're spawning Lambo and our teammates are on the hard point, you simply just want to get there and support them as fast as possible. But if you're spawning Lambo and none of our teammates are on the hard point, you can automatically expect the enemies to start challenging you. So I would recommend having one AR player on the Lambo to pre-aim the right head glitch and the rock head glitch. And then the 2 SMG players, I would recommend them to throw shoulders here, swing out, and then once you get to right here, both of you guys can look up and throw grenades into the air so it lands in this inner cubby right here. Now, as these 2 SMG players throw these grenades, of course, if we get kills, one player would slide in and drop shot to play for this kill on the left, while the other player flies in and plays for this corner right here. If the enemies aren't in the corners, you can expect them to be pushing down through middle right here. And then if we have a 4th AR player that did spawn at Lambo with us, the 4th AR player can go wide and just take these gunfights from a wider angle like this. However, if you spawn middle right here, that means the enemies are already looking at Lambo, and you could dedicate at least one player, specifically an AR player, to just get right here and hold for a kill. Now, as you're crossing, expect an enemy to be in this corner, and then expect an enemy to be on the head glitch. And if you don't see an enemy on the head glitch or in that right corner, expect them to be in this left corner or this close left corner right here. Everyone else, though, this is what they should do. We should have 2 players going top middle. One player can go to this window and look, bottom line, look at top, and the other player would be swinging across, and these guys should be in a 2v1, maybe a 2v2. And the idea is we're just playing for these trades to push up and fight through this little connector right here. But our teammate, or our last teammate, or our first teammate that spawns in should automatically just run through middle right here, start pushing all the way through middle, go bottom line, and then go for a pinch right here. So again, to just say that again, if we're all 4 spawning at middle right here, the very first spawner should just run all the way through to bottom line to pinch the enemies off. And then we would have 2 teammates going top halls, and then we would have 1 teammate playing at Lambo. And again, you're really looking forward to getting an advantage going up 4v3 or 4v2. Once you go up 4v3, 4v2, that's when you can then hit the hard point. In this moment, if you get the kills, you could hit the hard point this way, or what I've seen a lot of pros do is after they get this kill, they just do a quick wall bounce, and then they start triple hitting through middle with their teammates. On the opposite side, if you're spawning close, I would say probably 90% of the time you have control of the hill, so just get there. But if the enemies control the hard point, you're going to be spawning back at boat over here. And there's a few options on how you can go about this. I would usually recommend the first spawner to go top office over here and start looking for enemies to be playing in the hallway. And if we really want to, we can send 2 people to do this. So we can send either 1 person or 2 people to fight top hallways. The next thing we can do is we could then have 1 AR player pushing up on this head glitch, expecting enemies to push out. And if they're not pushing out, then you can push up to this head glitch right here. One thing I didn't say is check this corner. Sometimes there might be an enemy playing this corner. So you'll be in this head glitch, check the corner, push up, play this head glitch right here. And then typically we would have 1 SMG player playing close, throw the grenade over to land inner. You can throw shoulders and look for a kill, swing in. And when you swing in, exact same thing. You're sliding into a drop shot, shooting this close right, and then you're challenging the close left corner. Now, let's say we didn't send 2 players middle and we only send 1. This is where I would say your first spawner could actually hit a water route. So the first spawner could go into the water, AR player goes to the head glitch, SMG player plays on the front, and then our other AR player would go top office and start playing middle. And at this point, you would just want to make sure that as you're swimming, make sure there's no enemy sitting on this rock over here, make sure there's no enemy in the water, and of course, make sure there's no enemy like standing up on this wall looking to kill you. But at this point, once you get here, you can now just hit a wall bounce and then pull yourself up, and then you can play for these kills. Now, talking about an ideal setup, honestly, you could just have 3 people on point. You can have 1 guy just literally just throwing shoulders and clearing all of middle the entire time, while you have an AR player, playing on this head glitch, laying down, playing on this head glitch, or maybe even hitting a wall bounce to look for info. And then you could have a 3rd and final player, throwing shoulders as well, just being a nuisance, or just sitting in this corner and just waiting for the enemies to push up. No matter what, I would always recommend having our fourth teammate, our last teammate alive, to always be standing right here looking for a water push. If not standing right there looking for the water push, you could be standing back here looking for the water push, just like this. But there is one final thing you can do, and that is if we have kills. If we have kills, I always recommend at least one player to push off of the hard point and then go bottom wine. Because now you can sit bottom wine and you can literally spawn trap the enemies right here the entire time. And all you have to do is literally just, kill one, back up, maybe lay down right here. One pushes you, you kill another, you look for another, boom, you kill another guy. You probably do a hop up top, expect a guy to hit top office, and you can literally just play in this position here and see if they hit top office or bottom. If they hit top office, drop down. But if they hit bottom, you can just go inside. So this one position right here is honestly a power position. It's a win condition where if we get all 4 enemies dead, have one player push up to right here because you can just spawn trap and cause so much of a nuisance. So that was going over everything for Hacienda Hardpoint, and we will move on to Hacienda SnD. But first, I just want to ask you guys, was this helpful? Is there anything I can add? This is my first time ever doing a video like this, so I'm sure there's a few, things I'm missing. I'm also leaving out a few, breaks, or I'm leaving out a few rotations just because we kind of already talked about them. So if there's any way I can change the format or give you guys more information, please let me know, and I will definitely do it. Also, before we hop into this SnD, again, if you're interested in coaching or my Discord, feel free to check that out in the description below. I do one-on-one coaching, team coaching, and more. All right, but let's move on to Hacienda SnD. As you can see under my webcam, these are all the Hacienda SnD timings, where off of your spawn and getting into these positions, this is how long it takes. One of the most notable ones to realize is on offense. Offense can actually push up this spiral staircase and they can get into this right side window 1 full second before the enemies can. And this is huge. And it's for either window and bottom. If you challenge on the left, you get here a full second before the enemies. And if you decide to just run straight through the bottom, you actually get into this position a full 2 seconds before the enemies. So you can already start, lining up your shot for the kill, or maybe you can find an opening for you to push out. Again, the specific timing in the bottom to get there first is making sure you hug this close right corner so you can hold the top left. Obviously, if you push out right here, this takes like an extra 2 seconds. Another crazy thing about offense is it seems like when you are pushing over here towards the B lane, everyone is getting here at the exact same times. Now, one advantage that defense has is they can actually throw the grenades over and get you weak right about here before you can even push up. So that's where, when you're watching Pro League, you're probably going to see a lot of teams kind of just wait for those grenades and then they hit rock late. But based on the timings, you can actually get here at the exact same times as the enemies do. Here's the craziest change and the biggest change going from last year to this year, and it's actually pushing over here towards the A bomb site. You get here way later compared to the team on defense. So you can get into this position right here and do wall bounces, and as you're wall bouncing, you'll see the enemies pushing out of 10 or pushing towards the bomb site. But the craziest part is if you try to just simply run out of well and chow right here, the enemies will definitely get to the bomb before you so they can start shooting you, or they'll just get to this angle before you so they can start shooting you, or one of the SMGs can try to swing across and just start cutting you off right here out in the open. And those are the biggest timing changes for the map, but let's go ahead and go over some scenarios. When you're playing SnD as a team, there's typically 2 main strategies you want to follow, maybe 3. The first 2 are going to be playing spread, which is actively having 1 player on each lane. So 1 player left, 1 player middle, 1 player right, and then you dedicate your 4th player to work wherever we need it. On defense, if the enemies are constantly playing A, that's where you would put your 4th player. But on offense, you would need to, put that player wherever you expect you can find an opening, or wherever you want to try to work to get the bomb planted. Now, if you're not going to run spread, the next one is running 3-1. 3-1 is simply just having 1 player watching the pinch from somewhere, and then all 3 other teammates are pushing towards a bomb site to try and get control of it to plant the bomb. Now, the one odd man out, he could be standing at Lambo while all 3 people are working, towards B-bomb, or maybe he could be playing over here on this hedge where he can hold left and he can hold all of the middle. Just the whole point is you have 3 teammates working aggressively on the map to get the bomb planted while one guy is watching the pinch. Now, the last strategy is a 2-2 strategy, where typically you would have 2 people rushing one lane and then 2 people rushing the other lane, so all 4 of us are playing in a side of the map. One of the most classic examples that you guys will see in the CDL almost all the time is teams run in a 2-2 or a 3-1 split, where literally all 3 players challenge top middle here, and we have 1 player at Lambo, or we have 2 players at Lambo and 2 players top hallway. And no matter what, we are able to work together through this connector right here. So, if we need help middle, our teammates over here at Rock can push through, and if our teammates at Rock need help, we can push through middle to Rock right here. So if you're on a team, you're typically going to call out a spread, a 3-1, or a 2-2 play. But if you're playing solo queue, that's going to be a little bit harder because not everyone is going to know what a spread play is or a 3-1. But let's go ahead and go over some different strategies you can use through solo queue. So as a solo queue player, a lot of people don't know that you can actually get into this wall bounce before the enemies. And if you pull out a sniper right here, I can guarantee that if these enemies are trying to push up A on defense, you can literally snipe them right here and get away with 1 or maybe 2 kills. And again, because you can actually get to top middle before the enemies, I would also recommend pulling out the sniper and seeing if you can get away with literally just lining up your shot, shooting, and getting a kill. But if you're not going to use a sniper, one of my favorite plays is pulling out an SMG and going to bottom secret over here. And the reason why is you can start looking for info. You can see if these enemies are pushing through the right. You can see if they're pushing through the left. If anyone did hit middle, you can look for that kill. But eventually what will happen is if you don't see anyone at all, you can start pushing through. And now once you get past into the enemy's base, at this point, you have full range on doing whatever you want. You can flank B right here. You can go top office and flank through top office. You could also go all the way over here on the left and flank through the left. So playing bottom middle is one of my favorite spots, especially on the opposite side as well. So if we're playing defense, I almost always play bottom middle in my solo queue games, just because right here, I can see if they're hitting top left, hitting top right, or hitting bottom middle. If they don't hit any of these, and I get info that the enemies are going towards A, I can instantly push up to cut right here and start cutting off the enemies trying to cross to A. But if they're not trying to play for A and instead they're trying to play for B, at this moment, I can either hop up with my teammate, which I would recommend hopping up right here and then clearing out this flank. And then at this point, you can either start shooting the enemies off of Bond from this one position, or you can make the decision to go all the way through and full flank. If you go for a full flank, I would typically recommend going all the way around like this because people like to sit in this corner and you can typically see them from right here. But that being said, make sure you clear all the corners just in case. Maybe they could be playing on Rock looking for you, but if you don't see anyone at all, then definitely check this corner because this corner almost no one checks. That being said too, when you play middle, you don't have to take the routes that I'm recommending. You could also hop up and, play it way more aggressive and get into the enemy's face. At that point, it just comes down to, are you more confident in your gunfight ability? If yes, take them and play for the win. Now, talking about A side on defense, because you do get here first, like I said, be careful of a sniper bouncing right there. But other than that, you can literally close up to this position right here. Just sit right here, just literally wait for the enemies to run right in front of you. Ideally, you would also have a AR player watching your deep right, either standing on that head glitch or standing on the staircase right here. I would recommend having 2 people playing A because most enemies tend to play here the most. But like I said, because they get here later, they could start transitioning into just playing B a lot more. So maybe if we're playing spread, that's where we want to have our 4th player playing at B. But if you don't want to lay down in this corner, you could then also push across and just sit right here. And if you don't have any info at A at all, at that point, you pretty much know that they're playing middle or they're playing at B. So then you can start cutting through. Just be careful. When you swing out right here, there could be an enemy bottom looking for you, and there could be an enemy top window. I would say the enemy top window is less of a threat because they have to worry about different things. So you could really just prioritize these gunfights here. And same exact scenario. At this point, you can go bottom secret. You can go for a full flank. You can go up the secret staircase, or you can hit a wall bounce right here, get up top, and like look for these kills. If you're ever playing A by yourself, you could just throw shoulders like this, left and right, so you have info if they're going left or right. And of course, if you do get shot on your left, I would recommend just going back through the doorway to survive. And same thing, if you see an enemy on the right, you can just go through the doorway and survive. You could then back up to this plat and just hold your push through. But if you don't want to do this, one thing that I have yet to see anyone do yet is just literally stand in this window right here and then just hold an off angle. In theory, this should make the enemies think, oh, cool, no one's playing defense A, let's push through. And if they try to push through, you can find a free kill here, which kind of wish I recommended this in the hardpoint, because this is probably a pretty good spot to play for hardpoint. Now, if you're in this gunfight, I would recommend hitting a wall bounce backwards, just so you hit your head on top of this ledge here, and it's going to give a awkward animation for the enemy. If you go too wide, you're going to end up getting shot from multiple angles. Even if you don't want to jump, then I would say it's probably even best to just literally just drop down, and then you can wall bounce and get out. Last but not least, playing over here on B side, you could just have an AR out or an SMG and just like wait for the gunfights up close. You could also like lay down and like play for a timing, and not necessarily snake, but play for one pumps and see if you can get a lucky timing. If you guys didn't know, they did get rid of the wallbang spot on the bottom right here, so you can no longer see if they crossed a bomb, and you can't wallbang them. However, you could look through these little like slits right here, and you can see if you find them going inner. Maybe you can see if they're going outer. Yeah, you can see if they're like pushing up towards the rock here a little bit. But really, this is like the best way you can play solo. The only thing you need to really worry about is making sure your middle is covered. Because if your middle isn't covered, this one enemy can just push bottom middle and just find the freest kill on you, which that's going to be really annoying. If you are playing solo B and none of your teammates are helping you, and these enemies keep going B, then I would recommend literally going for a water play. Again, as you're going for this water play, you're going to have your pistol out. You can expect another enemy to be going for the water play. But instead of doing the wall hop right here, I would recommend go all the way around. And as you go around, make sure no one's standing in the window, make sure no one's standing on that rock. And then at this point, you could just do a quick hop up and you can find a flank on all these enemies at rock. Now, let's say we actually do have our teammates playing with us over here at B. I would recommend just throwing a grenade over this wall, one person going wide to see if the enemies are pushing up, and then one person should always go inner to quickly chow these players middle, because like I said, a lot of teams like to triple chow middle while one player instantly rushes to rocks right here. So if you're rushing towards hallways right here, you can definitely expect an enemy to be here. Now, let's say this one teammate leaves. I would always recommend this one teammate leaving to either go bottom secret right here or play the top hallways here and try to find a kill on the staircase or from top U and just look for this kill. But if we are staying at Rockside and we're staying at B, honestly, sometimes the best thing you can do is either grab a corner or just play for info. If you have an AR, I would recommend playing for info like this because you might get a good timing where you see them pushing out and you find a kill. Then also drop down to the head glitch, drop down to a wider angle like this. But if you have an SMG, you could just default to just, sticking to this corner right here, just laying down, waiting for the enemies to push. If you don't want to lay down in this corner, you could try to push up and lay down in this corner. If you can get into this corner is pretty nice. A lot of enemies don't check it. But let's say both of you leave rock. At this point, I would highly recommend both of you to hit top halls together. And at this point, you guys could just follow through, play the kills on the staircase, go top U, look for the kills off of A-bomb. Or because we have two of us, we could push down these staircases and go for a full flank. The reason why I say I want to make sure we have two for this full flank is just because there's so many corners you need to clear. There's so many just spots the enemies can play. I think just having one player or two players there for a guaranteed trade is way more important. If you're one player, then I would just stick with, dropping down and either going through U right here, hopping up through the window and then flanking through top U. Or maybe you can go down into secret right here, and then you can go for the flank on secret steps. On defense, there's a few ways you can go about playing this side over here. You could just have the AR out and just simply just hold the pre-aim here. Just hold it for the team. Make sure no one pushes through. If we are rushing this, you could throw a grenade over the garage, and that'll land inner if you're expecting the enemies to rush without throwing grenades. Other than that, I would just recommend having our two SMGs push up, throw the grenades over right here, clear it out just how we talked about clearing out P4 for hardpoint. But there is the water route that you can take. So with the water route, I would highly recommend just instantly hopping into the water. And this is by far the best part about taking the water route on defense, is if all of your teammates are just playing their lives, you can find a free kill. Usually you can probably find a free kill right here. If not right there, you can keep swimming all the way around. And as you swim all the way around, you may find one player in the window, but at this point, you're so far in the enemy's base, you are fully behind them. Just always expect one enemy to be rotating back right here. But if you don't expect one enemy to be rotating back, at this point, you're probably going to find yourself some free kills top hallway. Just remember that when you're going on this flank, literally you are doing, the most important thing on the map. You are the most valuable player. So like take your time with it and like guarantee one kill. That's the most important thing, is guaranteeing one kill. If you don't get one, it just makes the game so much harder for everyone else. Now let's talk about post-plant scenarios. So if you ever see the bomb planted on this side of the bomb, you can always expect the enemies to be playing over here at rock side. And one important thing is, after you kill these enemies at rock side, if you're retaking, if you're missing one enemy, that last enemy you're missing might be sitting in this corner. If they're not sitting in this corner, then that enemy took a route and rotated all the way around right over here. Which, me showcasing this right now, you guys can use this in your one-on-one clutches, or, if you're in a 3v4, you planted the bomb, your teammates, kill 3, and then they all die, and you're in a 1v1, taking this route can help a lot. So again, plant the bomb on this side right here. You could then back up. You can just chill for a few seconds, watch your pinch, kind of just wait. If you're in a 1v1, this is a little bit harder because you're going to have to check bomb and make sure they don't defuse it. But typically, if you find one kill right here and the enemies know that you're playing on this side, you can instantly pull out your knife, go in a big circle, and then by the time you go to this middle doorway, you can already shoot them off of the bomb right here. And the same thing does work for the opposite side. It's just, if the bomb's planted this way, you can rarely expect the enemies to push through like this. But there's a chance, right? They probably see that they can push out right here, and then maybe they find one kill. They escape with their life. And then as they're playing their life, maybe the bomb comes down to 14 seconds left. They're then going to hop up, and then they're going to be able to shoot the bomb from this angle right here. I don't know how consistent you can wallbang this white ledge right here, but I did test it and you can wallbang. I just don't know how much damage it deals to the enemies. So if you do plant the bomb on this side, you could back all the way over here towards this rock, or one player could hop into the water and go towards the boat side. And basically you can just literally just pelt the bomb a few times and just see if the enemies are there. You could also probably hit a wall bounce right here to actually see the bomb as well. And if you see them on it, then you can wall bang. But honestly, that's a little risky. I would say just planting the bomb on this side right here is usually the better option. And then of course, same thing. If you plant the bomb on this side, you can expect the enemies to be playing over here at office. And I would say damn near 9 times out of 10, they are playing top office. So if the bomb's planted on that side, expect them to be here. Now at B side, there really is nothing special because you can plant the bomb on either side. I will say the safer way is planting it behind the bomb here, because at that point you can only see the bomb if you actually check it and run up to it. But if you plant the bomb on either other side, at that point you have the exact same thing you can do. You can plant the bomb, play towards this side, wait for a kill, find one kill, and then you start rotating up. And as you rotate up, you can find the rest of the kills here. Which that is one final tip I will say is, if we have the bomb planted, most of these enemies will be pushing through top halls. We can expect them to be there. So you can honestly just play the timing, wait a good solid 20, 25, maybe even 30 seconds. And at that point, you hit a late pinch top. You might find a lot of free kills in the enemy sides. So that concludes Hacienda. And I like to think we went over pretty much everything you need: spawns, timings, ideal setups, routes, rotations. We went over the SnD timings, how to play certain formations, certain scenarios, how to play the lanes. We also went over, how to clutch up after planting the bomb or needing to defuse the bomb. So hopefully this was almost everything you can go over for Hacienda Hardpoint. That being said, if you guys do have any constructive criticism, if there is anything I missed, if there is a way I can format it better, just please comment down below so I can work on it and just make it that much better. Other than that, that concludes the video. I appreciate you guys all for sticking throughout the video. If you guys are interested in one-on-one coaching, my Discord, my ranked playbook, please feel free to check that out in the description below. And as always, if you guys have any questions, just let me know and I'm happy to help. Other than that, please, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, comment down below if you want to see more like this, and I'll catch you guys next time. Thank you so much, and peace.